Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Dant, and I am the PCA Region Focus Coordinator. Welcome to the first quarter HPDE webinar presented by Mia Walsh, PCA National DE Chair. Also joining us this evening is Dan Dazzo, Safety Committee Chair. Before we get started, I have a few things I would like to cover. This webinar is being recorded for future use for those who cannot attend. As a bit of housekeeping for the webinar, everyone will be muted as this helps to eliminate disruptive background noise. I would also like to draw your attention to the Ask Question feature located towards the bottom right of your screen. If during the presentation you have a question, you can submit it there. We'll be reviewing the submissions during the webinar and, if possible, address them on the call. Otherwise, we'll follow up with you later with a resolution. So without further delay, Mia, if you're ready, I'll hand control over to you.
Laura, thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our first quarter 2025 webinar. I would like to first thank our program sponsor, Pirelli. Pirelli provides sponsorship to the HPDE program to enable us to travel to the different regions to perform the national instructor training, as well as all of the different projects that we have going on. I am going to be speaking very quickly tonight. I have the first half an hour of the presentation, and then I'm going to be passing it over to Dan Dazzo, the National Safety Chair. Dan received a lot of questions in advance, which we'll be discussing tonight. So let us get started on the HPDE side. First of all, I'd like to take a moment to welcome all the new region leadership, presidents, zone reps, DE chairs, chief instructors, and safety chairs that have been invited to participate this evening. I'd also like to say a thank you to Scott Mann, who has been one of our national trainers for the National Instructor Training Program. He's been part of the DE world with PCA National for a long time, and Scott has moved on to continue his work within the Las Vegas region. So I just wanted to thank him for all of his dedication and hard work and volunteerism over the last number of years. I'd also like to take a moment to thank these regions, and I was looking at my calendar and I said, how am I going to 4 racetracks in March? And I actually have a free weekend. And I looked at the March calendar and there are 5 weekends in March. So I've already been to the Potomac region at Summit Point Motorsports Park in March. Last weekend, I was at Utah Motorsports Campus with the Intermountain region. I'm headed to Thunder Hill with Golden Gate region, and also to Pueblo Motorsports Park with Alpine and Rocky Mountain regions. So thank you to all of those regions who are hosting me or have hosted me this year. You can see we had a national instructor training school at the Utah Motorsports Campus with the PCA Intermountain region, and it's a photo from our track event there that last weekend. And boy, look at those beautiful mountains on the racetrack. It's kind of hard to keep your eyes focused where they need to be when you're surrounded by that beauty all around the race course there. I'm going to talk a little bit about our 2024 accomplishments in the HPDE program on the national side, talk about the 2020-25 goals, and then, as I said, we're going to be getting to the safety chair questions that you've had and some information that the National Safety Chair, Dan Dazzo, is going to be sharing with you. So what did 2024 look like in the HPDE world? Similarly, about 200 events within PCA, US, and Canada. And you can see that they are pretty much the same across the board with time trials. We had advanced only sessions. We had in-car instruction, car control clinics, tech inspections. We did have insurance requests for lead follow, but I did follow up with those regions independently to verify that that was an accident, that we did not have any lead follow events in either 2023 or 2024. So I just wanted to confirm that, and I did speak to all of those regions independently. We had a very hefty set of goals in 2024. We reviewed and updated the minimum standards. As you know, we went and also updated the tech inspection standards and the tech inspection forms. We spent a lot of time communicating all of those changes with you last year. We've written some guidelines for instructor candidates, so we have a good baseline of who we are accepting into the instructor candidate program. We continued our development of the National Instructor Training curriculum and tweak it after every session just to make sure that the flow is perfect, that the content is perfect, and that we're able to hit all of the key points during the 4 on-track and 4 classroom sessions that we have. We're working on instructor refresher training to be able to provide that data and content out to the regions. And a lot of it is valid of what we've done in our National Instructor Training Program, the existing one. So we are going to be utilizing some of the content there and then giving you some ideas of some things that you could be doing on track to help refresh your existing instructors. And we've got most of the content done for the DE 101 Best Practices Handbook, just a little guide of what you can have in your region when you're holding a DE, just some sample driver's meeting notes and best practices for the forms and documents and all of the different roles that are in a good HPDE program for the volunteer roles. So we're almost done putting that together in a nice format to be able to share. We had some driver classroom training material repository goals for 2024. It turned to be a little bit more that we could bite off in that 1 year last year. So we'll be continuing to work on that in 2025. And then we also wanted to provide some data and information for electric vehicles on track. And we're very pleased to announce that on PCA National, we have a new role called the EV Technical Coordinator, and that is being filled by David Bankston. So those questions, any EV related questions, could be directed to him if it's outside of the DE world, but I am working with him on DE standards and things for electric vehicles. We did have one run through with several of my DE committee members have put together a modified tech inspection form for electric vehicles. I do need to present that to the EC, but obviously there are a lot of things on our regular tech inspection form that aren't valid for an electric vehicle. We did a lot of content in 2024 for taking the mystery out of HPDE. And that's geared to drivers that may have never been part of an HPDE before, taking a little bit of that anxiety out of someone who wants to join an HPDE program and doesn't know exactly what it is. So there was a Tech Tactics Live by PCA National that's on the PCA YouTube channel, Driving Your Porsche on a Racetrack with PCA. There was also a video and audio podcast from the PCA Insider on learning what your Porsche was meant to do on the racetrack. They are reposted them again on the HPDE Facebook page group. So those are out there for you if you would like to share them. And then there was I think 6 or 7 or 8 page article on bringing your car out to an HPDE and all of the things that one must think about. That PDF is available under the HPDE Driver's Ed content on pca.org. And again, I did post that again today on the Facebook page if that's something that you would like to share with your regions. Last year, we had several modules for continuing professional education for our instructors, topics of the unconscious brain and why it matters on the racetrack with both female racers Pippa Mann and Ashley Freiberg. We had using data to help your students understand braking, as well as bridging the gap between HPDE and club racing. We have an HPDE YouTube channel. Those are on there as well. And I am working at putting updated content on our website, and I'll be talking about that a little bit later. And I know I'm speaking really quickly, but you all had a lot of questions for Mr. Dazzo, so I want to keep going. I have gotten only positive feedback about our quarterly HPDE leadership webinars. You see that we held them spread out March, June, September, and December. Those as well are posted on the HPDE YouTube channel. We held 20 national instructor training schools in 2024, which was a lot of work by our national trainers traveling around to all of the different regions, as well as a lot of work by the region volunteers to put all of that together. You know, they have to match their mentors with their candidates. They have to get the track time. They've got to staff the corner working stations and the grid, as well as building a schedule around a DE in some cases. So thank you to all of those regions in 2024 who have hosted a national instructor training school, as well as those in 2025 who will be hosting one as well. We had 20, as I said, last year, and we graduated 211 new PCA national instructors. I have been notified that PCA is the #1 trainer of HPDE instructors in the US. We train in 2024, we trained a little over 45% of all of the new instructors that came through the MSF Foundation, as well as all of the different private organizations that are out there. So I'm very proud of that statistic and putting out high quality instructors for our HPDE program and our new novice drivers and advancing drivers out there. So thank you to all those who participated. This past year, we worked with the Alabama region to host a DE at the Barber Motorsport Park. I know I talked about it a lot during the year in preparation, but they had over 30 regions in attendance at that event. And boy, they did a fantastic job. Very proud of the Alabama region. And this year, at the end of the parade, the War Bonnet region will be hosting a DE at Hallett Motorsports Park on July 12th, a one-day DE. This year there is a link notification on the parade website, although it is not a parade event per se. There is information on the website, and I am working with War Bonnet as well as the zone rep to ensure that everybody has a fantastic event there at Hallett Motorsports. We are continuing our region leadership updates. The schedule's here. I've emailed it out a couple of times. I'll email it out again with any follow-up notes from this webinar. Our next one is on May 20th, which will be our second Coding Some Market, as well as any updates that we have. We're going to work a little bit more in September on adult or driver control clinics or car control or driver skills. A lot of regions have different names for it, but we'll be talking a little bit about that more in more detail. And then December 2nd as well. 2025, you know, we can't slow down at all. We're really making such great progress here. We're working on the PCA.org section for the HPDE or driver's education, really spending some time to put some relevant content there for you to use as regions or for individuals who might want to learn about the HPDE program. We have 15 scheduled national instructor training schools. We're working with 2 other regions to get one on the books. We're going to continue our continuing professional education modules with some topics that are including coaching technique, student evaluations, as well as instructor evaluations, which it's a really good part of a developing program to really ensure that we're putting our best feet forward out in the DE world. As I mentioned, the HPDE marketing, as well as a little bit more content on driver skill and car control clinics. And I'm going to go into that soon, a little bit further in this presentation. Here is a list of our scheduled schools. As you can see, they're really front-loaded in early spring. And obviously the reason is because the DE programs, the regions want to have a solid core of instructors for their driving season. And so if they get them trained and get them ready to go work with the individual drivers in the beginning of the year, then, you know, they will have that core of volunteer instructors throughout the driving season. So just for those regions who are thinking about it, maybe not being able to get one together in the books for 2025, just know that as soon as you might have a date available in 2026, our spring is so busy. We really try to get it on the books as early as we can. As I said, we're going to continue with our continuing professional education modules. I'm going to have you launch a poll, if you don't mind, Laura, while I take another sip of water. Does your region hold driver skills or car control clinics? And the poll is open. You should see a poll block coming on your screen. If you could just take a moment to answer that, I would appreciate it.
We're at 20% yes, 77% no, and 4% I don't know.
So car control clinics and adult driver skill programs currently don't run specifically under autocross. They don't run specifically under DE. There's not a separate minimum standard for those. So our committee was asked to help pull information together to help the regions. And a couple of the things that we are working on and identifying is understanding who the target audience is for something like this. It's not necessarily someone that wants to do an HPDE program, but maybe wants to understand vehicle dynamics and being a better driver on the street. We're going to write some minimum standards using probably autocross as a baseline, working down from that because it's not quite an autocross. It's not a competitive environment. And then we're going to create a little guide for the regions that might want to implement a adult driver skill or car control program. So you do not have to develop a program from scratch. And it's something that we have had a lot of members ask about. They want to get in their car. They want to learn how to drive their cars. They want to kind of have fun in their car, maybe pushing the vehicle not to its limit. Obviously, the car's limit's much greater than any of us could ever imagine, but to, put it in scenarios where they will have to work on the car and understand the vehicle dynamics of their cars. So just so you all know, in 2024, there were 18 adult driver skill programs, down from 23 the year before. But these programs were in 10 zones. So all across the US and Canada, there are regions that are holding these events. And I had a specific question from Mitch Lewis in Inland Northwest because his region was interested in holding one and he couldn't find any information about it, and it's because it didn't exist. So, Mitch, I'm going to work with you separately on that, but just know that that's something that we are working on. What would a component be? Car safety, inspections, really understanding what to look for in your car, vision, braking, slalom, swerve to avoid, maybe we have seen in the driver skills or car control clinics that are out there already. And so that's just a little bit about what we're going to be doing with driver skills. Now, and again, I know I'm blowing through this, so we're going to take time for Q&A a little bit later. We got a lot of questions on the technical inspection changes. As you know, we did talk a lot about this in 2024 during the quarterly webinars, and certainly gave you a lot of opportunities to ask questions about it. But Laura, I'm going to ask a poll here of the regions that are on the call. Who's going to be adopting the 120 days? Who's staying at 30? There might be some moving to 60 or 90, or maybe you don't know. So if you could launch that, I would appreciate it.
33% are staying at 30, 16% are going to the 120, and 44% say, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. We did have a Google form where we had 22 responses, and it looked like the numbers were a little different than what came online today, but I think that maybe some of the people who are on the call are presidents or zone reps, and they might not know what they're doing in the particular region. So just looking at this and the numbers that Laura just mentioned, we're kind of all over the board with what the regions have chosen to do. And I'm bringing that up specifically because in that Google form questionnaire that I had, you can see we had, I don't know, maybe a dozen different zones answer questions about that. And you saw how that pie chart, the slide before was that it was all over the place. So I wanted to make this warning out there for regions and zones that you might have a region that's adjacent to your region that might be implementing 120 days, but your region may only be maintaining that 30 days. And it's really up to the regions to communicate that to their drivers, in as much as whoever the host region is, that is the basis for the tech inspection. So if I'm Chesapeake region and they've adopted 120 days, but I'm going to a DE at the Potomac region, which is 30, that 120 day is not valid. So it's valid for whomever is the region that is hosting the event. So I really want to make that clear to the registrars when you're putting up your information in club registration or motorsport reg, that you need to be very clear about what your region's procedures are. And I do ask the zone reps to maybe put something together for their regions of who is adopting which, and like sending that out to your region leadership within your zone, so they can kind of see who their adjacent regions are and what they're running. I'm almost at the bottom. So I know we got 5 more minutes before Dan Dazzo comes in, but December I had received a request to do some bulk helmet purchasing for loaner pools, of whether it's autocross or DE. And we have been identifying different sponsors who are equipment sales companies as well as manufacturers of helmets. So my one final question out there, if your region is interested in a bulk helmet purchase, and let me just say one thing. Your region would be paying for it directly. Your region would get them shipped to you directly, as well as they're yours to keep. So it's just us that are facilitating a bulk purchase, but the regions would be paying for it and receiving them directly. So I see that Lars launched it. If you could maybe answer that quick question.
So we've launched the poll. We've had about 50% of the people respond. We're at 6% with the full-faced, 16% with the open-faced, 30% no, and about 40% I don't know. So we'll give it a couple more seconds and then we'll close that one.
And Laura will be able to tell me who answered that, and I'll send you guys a separate link so you can formally, if you formally request it in the questionnaire I'm going to send out, doesn't mean that you're committing to buying them. It just gives me an idea of a total quantity that we will be putting out for bid for the different vendors that are out there. Okay, so I finished with 3 minutes prior to my ending. We did have a wonderful response for the safety chair with questions that were posed for Dazzo, who's the National Safety Chair. We received 22 questions in advance. Some of them were things that were specific to a particular region, so we did answer a number of those offline. And those topics were, driver skills, of which you talked about, specific roles of safety chair. There was a new safety chair that wanted to know what they should be doing, some questions on the helmet extension, and then some insurance questions as well. So we did answer those. I will talk about the helmet expiration extension again. SA 2015 helmets normally would expire in December of this year, 2025. Every 5 years we go through this, that the manufacturers don't have the current ratings available. So we have preempted our extension to at least February 28th, 2026, depending on what the inventory looks like and the supply chain. We may revisit that again, but at least for now, your 2015 helmets would be valid until February 2026. And I have seen that some HPDE registration systems are noting that in there so as well. And Dan, there were a couple questions that I'm just going to take in advance before giving to you. They were pretty simple ones that I think I have 2 or 3 of them. So I'm going to go ahead and answer that. So we're staying with a pre-event tech for each event. Does that mean that we need to collect and keep and store 2 tech forms at each event? Bill, I am going to talk to you offline about this, but for those who are going with the 120-day tech form, the first pages are what that driver is going to be responsible to maintain and bring to each event, an original tech form for that 120 days. At each event, there's the at-track tech inspection that they will have to bring, and that is the one sheet of paper that you will maintain and collect at that event. So they keep the 120-day form until their 120 days is over, but they will hand in a at-track tech inspection form. I got a question from Rensport. Please provide rationale and justification for Section B of the tech form and its implementation. So I know that the print is teeny weeny here, but Section B is the at-track grid tech inspection. And those are the things that are in the minimum standards that the regions need to, at the beginning of an event, check. And floor mats, loose objects, all of the things on here. I'm not going to read it. You guys know what that says in the minimum standards. The signature required is really the driver's signature and their license expiration date and the emergency contact information. If you read that size 4 font, that driver is releasing liability for anybody that looks at the car, tech inspection, for the region, for anything that happens on track. This is the legalese that they sign saying that they are responsible for anything with their car that happens on track, and that they are responsible for ensuring that their car is in the proper form for it to go on track with us. Maybe just take a look at that indemnification, and that is the reason for the signature there. In my head, I think that Stan could have been referring to a prior year where the tech inspector at the track, there was a signature line, but we took that out in 2024. So, perhaps he was referring to where there was a signature line for the tech inspector at the track. That does not exist anymore. Dan's worked with me on this. This is from Dirk at the Potomac region. Region safety chairs are not getting the incident reports, which they used to get. How are we supposed to do our jobs? Well, that is a good question. Thank you, Dirk. Dan and I took a look at where the forms were going. So you fill your incident reports online, and there's a distribution list that's there. When we looked at the region procedures manual, and I don't actually know if it was the national manual of policies and procedures, one of those two, I forget where it was, they did not match. It didn't match where it was going on the form. And what it said in the procedures manual did not match what the form was being said, where the form was being said. So we're working with David Witterad to update that. Incident reports will be going in this order, and we worked with Ken Laborde, the legal chair, on it, and Dan and me and Charlotte at PCA National. So it's going to go to whomever submitted it, and Dan's going to be talking about that, whoever submitted the form. It's going to go to the region president. It's going to go to the zone rep, the whatever national chair. If it's a DE one, it'll come to me. If it's autocross, it'll go to the national autocross chair. It will go to the national safety chair. Ken Laborde said that the region president can send it to the safety chairs or the DE chairs within their organization, but they are keeping it at the highest level of the region, and that puts the onus on the region presidents to distribute it within their organization. That is the update to that. I'm not going to read all of this detail. Again, thank you, Steve Carberry of Southeast Michigan. There was a little section in the very beginning of the final safety inspection form, the at-track tech inspection, that was referring to car phones and radar detectors, that they're mounting brackets, like a lot of people have them stuffed into the air conditioning grid vents, that must be removed and stored. But that differed from what in the minimum standards, that it's up to the regions to decide what they needed to do with the non-permanent mounting. So thank you, Steve. You know, we look at these a million times, and sometimes it takes somebody looking at it for the first time to give us the notion that we overlooked a particular word. So we will be updating that part in the beginning, that we will leave that up to the region. So thank you for pointing that to us. And now, Dan, it's your turn. Dan put a presentation together, and as well it has some more additional questions to answer from our group that we received in advance. So Dan, you're up.
Thank you, Mia, and welcome everybody. This presentation is basically for new safety chairs, but it also works for current safety chairs, and reminders on some of the duties and how to prep for especially DE events. I've gotten in the past year, and already several people this year who have become new safety chairs, and they have no clue where to get information or what their job is. So that's basically part of this. The main part of this is why I put it together. So for the safety chair pre-event preparation for a DE event coming up at a track, the chair should especially note and understand the car safety inspection forms, pre-track and final safety inspection form, which Mia covered earlier. And it can get complicated, but it doesn't need to be so. If you really look at it and stick, depending on which amount of days you're going for the inspection timeline. The chair should also know at the track they're going to, the passing zones, passing signals, and the procedures your region is going to use, especially now that we're using the turn signals and keeping the windows up. And the expanded passing areas and policy for your region for the current track. And then this is very important, incident policy, the post-event and observers report forms, and also the mandated time requirements for those forms. Anytime we get insurance for a driving event, we are required and mandated to submit a post-event and observers report. And if there's an incident, of course, we do an incident report. Another section is in the RPM, the Region's Procedures Manual. Section 6, which deals with region event liability insurance. And especially note and understand part 6.1, which is an article, a 2-page article that Ken Board wrote several years ago involving PCA insurance and risk management. And not only should the chair, the DE chair, but as well the CDIs and the DE committee chairs know and really promote the concept of the risk management, where you can get as a safety chair a guide for your duties and your responsibilities. In the RPMs, in section 2.6 is a safety chair article and of all moving car events. And right now in the mid-year update RPM, it's on page 40. So if you stick primarily with the part number I give you, whether or not the RPM, it's going to change when the new RPM manual comes out as far as the page number. The second one is part 2.13, and it deals with PCA safety recommendations and event minimum standards. And right now it's on page 64 to 66. And it covers a lot of materials that you need to know or need to have and be prepared for as a safety chair, as well as it gives you a direct link to all of the driving event minimum standards, whether it's DE, autocross, rally, etc. And then the last is what we just talked about, part 6.1, which involves insurance and risk management. Event duties for the event chair at the event. At your DE, observe and work the event proactively. Get out there and find out what's going on. Stay ahead of potential issues. When you see or hear of problems, coordinate with the CDIs and your DE chairs and handle the situations or the participants before it develops into an incident or numerous incidents. And remember, and I stress this, work with your CDI and the DE chair, especially with the CDI, and the safety chair is the last word. Even if the president of PCA is there, you as the safety chair have the last word. It's your event, you're responsible, the ultimate responsibility for the event. So coordinate and work it out. If you have an incident, every incident should be inspected by the safety chair and the CDI if possible. Note the incident scene and the vehicles involved. Interview the driver and or the participants involved. And then either the safety chair, the chief driving instructor, or the GE chair completes and submits the incident report. Please. Some regions are doing this. They'll give the incident report to the driver or participant and say, fill it out. That's not the way we do this. The chair or a member of the DE committee has to fill it out, especially CDI or the DE chair. And when you interview them, it's straight and simple. Just find out what happened and record such, but don't put too much in there as far as what your opinion is. That's not required. It's very straightforward information. Also, please note on these reports if the weather conditions, track conditions, anything unusual, that helps for me to evaluate the incident and what really went on, and to get a better understanding why we did have an incident. Mia, were you going to say something?
Yes, we received a question, how far down the chain in a region should the reports be allowed to flow? So if the president's sending that down the chain, in the DE world, DE chair, chief instructor, and safety chair would be the places where I would send it. I did talk about this at a prior quarterly webinar, that the region should not be giving the incident report to insurance companies. Sometimes they try to get the incident report from the region. They shouldn't be giving it to the driver either. So what's supposed to happen is that the region, if they receive a request from either a driver or an insurance company, they're supposed to direct that request to our insurance chair, who is Ken Laborde, insurance chair at PCA.org. So he is then supposed to deal with the driver and the insurance company if they're requesting a copy of the incident report. So I just wanted to bring that up again.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Okay. Event duties continued. The safety chair each day is involved in the driver instructor meetings. And I know, like Potomac, we had a separate drivers meeting, and then the instructors were in another room with their own meeting. So make sure, as you'll see at the end of this, that if you're not able to be at both places, of course, the other presenter covers what you need to say, and this is to be several bullets, very quick and simple. But to be effective at these meetings, you as a safety chair should be the last one to speak. Gain everybody's attention first, and then cover 3 or 4 bullets, very quick reminders of what you expect and what we expect for us to maintain the risk management and to keep the event safe from our participants and our instructors, everyone involved. So some of the bullets could be remind them of situational awareness, pay attention and concentrate when you're out there driving. Remember and go quickly, remind them of the proper passing signals and the passing executions. And this is very important that anytime we're in a passing situation, it's a contract between the two cars and that we are to do it as safely as possible. Everyone is involved with the risk management of the event. When there are two people in a car, the driver is responsible for two people. The instructor in the car is responsible for two people. And whether we're two people in the car or a single driver, we're all responsible for the rest of the cars out there. We want to make this work and be safe.
Yeah.
And check with everyone, do they understand, and have fun and be safe. So as a overview of what happened last year and some of the concerns that I had and discussed with several regions as well as with the committees. Overall, the number of incidents declined from the previous year. This has been a steady trend, and it shows we're working, and it's keeping our events safe and our insurance down. Many of those incidents were single car with mostly poor driver judgment, but also some mechanical issues, including what I call alleged brake failures. Now, Porsche, all Porsche cars, especially the later cars, we have fantastic brakes. And every now and then I get an incident report where I review it and I look at what type of car, if it's a Porsche, what year, if it's a newer car. And then when I go down to the comment box, the driver has said, my brakes failed. The pedal went to the floor. I couldn't stop. The ABS didn't work. And then further on, it says that the driver drove the car back to the paddock. So obviously the brakes were still working. That's a red flag for me. And I usually call the region and talk to them and ask, what did the driver say? And did you inspect the car and find out was there still a brake pedal there? So that's the type of situations that we need to really look at and make sure, is this actually what happened? Most brake failures like that are usually because the driver was using too much ABS, got the fluid really hot, and they had a spongy pedal. Now, those of us that drove in the early long-nose cars, 70s and 80s, where we didn't have ABS, knew that could happen, that we could cook the brake fluid. And if we start getting a spongy pedal, we were to come in. Do not stay out there and try and massage this. It won't work. Now, the other...
Yeah, can we move on to the two-car incidents? Because we've got a couple of questions that you need to address, and we're at our 10-minute warning.
Okay. I'll go through this quickly, but this is my really biggest concern. We had an increase of two-car incidents involving passing situations. Several of those were with a student and an instructor in one of the cars. In other words, there was a solo driver and then a student and instructor in the car. There was one involved a student and instructor in each car. And then there were two incidents involved an instructor taking a student out for teaching purposes. If that happens, especially for teaching purposes, and the instructor has an incident, everything they taught that student up to that point is gone. And it makes no sense. Situations like this are totally not acceptable. Unless there was a medical or mechanical issue, this should not be happening. So we really need to stress this at each event with our instructors and our drivers. All right.
Okay.
Is there
Question and answer. So I'll go ahead and ask the question if you don't mind, and Dan, you can take a stab. So a barrier to entry for PCA events is not being able to use expired belts. Almost every other club allows this. Is this something that can be explored? I know I would feel safer with a 7-year-old harness than I would with any stock belt.
All right, I know Chris, and I answered this for him earlier. Overall, I've been trying to work with this and get some type of change similar to what we have with helmets, where we have 2 certifications, like right now, 2015 and 2020 on our helmets. And for DE purposes, which we're not racing, it has nothing to do with racing. It may be preparation for later down the road to be a racer. But we have different guidelines and are much stricter. I think that we can have a little more extension on our harnesses, on the time limits. And if it's like 2 types of certification similar to helmets, that's what I'm trying to get. So it's been a work in progress. We may get there. I would like to very much see that. And I think most of the regions agree with me on that.
Right, we have presented it when we redid our minimum standards the year before last. It did not get approved. Put it in for last year, it did not get approved. So it is something that we've been trying to get, but it's not getting approved because they're not willing to override what the expiration date on a belt is at this point. So just know that it's not something that we're forgetting about, but we have been trying to get it pushed through. It just hasn't happened. Okay, next question. I have not seen any scientific basis from research or trials that suggest that 120-day tech inspection is safe. What data supports any choice for the number of days as a standard?
There is no direct data that we can look at that would refer or give us a solid support in doing this. There is my data that I can't keep track. I'm not allowed to keep track of all the incidents and exactly what goes on paper, but in my head, I do keep a track. And over the past 10 years, we have had very minor number of incidents involving failures of car parts or components, brake issues and such like that. So as far as that's the closest to the data that we have right now. And I've done some other research with other venues and also as far as litigations on issues with cars and problems at driving events such as ours. And I've not found anything as far as that would be detrimental to doing this 120-day change for the tech inspections.
And I just want to also say that we are not allowed to track incidents. So that's part of our policy is we can't track what regions, how many, what were the causes. We're supposed to read them and follow up with the region if anything skewy or awry looks like it's a little awry, but we're not allowed to track any of that information per PCA policies. That information just isn't out there. Okay, next question, and we've got 6 more minutes left, so I think we're actually doing pretty well. In the past, we've only allowed convertibles with roll bars, not including pop-ups in the 996, 997, 991, etc. We've decided that we will allow them going forward as it has become a barrier to entry. How do you recommend doing the broomstick test on these vehicles?
All right, I talked to Chris about this also, but I'll give it out there. When you're checking this, have the car with the top up, the driver in the car with their helmet on and positioned in the seat. You can put a broomstick or something similar on the top of the windshield and across towards the back, the highest point of that top. And if the driver's head or helmet is protruding or pushing up on the top, the convertible top anywhere, but it's still under that broomstick, actually it shouldn't be. If it protrudes too much, it's a done deal. It's not, you can't pass them, but otherwise it should be good. Now those pop-up bars are designed to come up and not disrupt that soft top. So that's a good indicator right there. What I do want to remind everybody, do not tell the driver or the participant of that car to activate the bar and have it come up. Early on, several years ago, we had some participants do that, come to a tech session with their bar already popped. In other words, they were able to engage it, it came up. And then when they found out that to have it reset, they would have to go back to the dealer, and it would cost anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000.
Ooh.
So that's not the way to find out if the bar went actually up.
Okay.
We'll meet that broomstick test.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we had a lot of comments, not questions, about the 30, 60, 90, 120-day inspection. Basically, you know, it is up to the region to decide. If you don't like the 120-day inspection, like my region is sticking with 30. So if you're not comfortable moving to a longer one, it is your prerogative to keep your standards more stringent than what the minimum standards are. And as you could see from some of the survey responses, you know, at least a third of those people, a third of those regions minimum are, you know, staying with that 30-day. So I just wanted to put that out there. All right, we are shockingly, with all of that content, we've got 3 minutes. Dan's contact information is there, safety@pca.org. My contact information is there, HPDE chair at pca.org. We've been answering questions under the question dialogue boxes. I think that we've answered them all. It looked like one of them that we might have to answer offline. Laura, do you have anything that we need to know about at this point?
Nope, it looks like you've covered everything.
Okay, well, then I'd like to just, as always, take a minute to thank my National DE Committee. Great group of people, really dedicated to helping the regions out there, as well as my national trainers. I'd like to thank Laura for giving us her time tonight. Thank you to Dan Dazzo, the National Safety Chair, for coming this evening. And I want to thank you all and wish you all a good night. Good night, everybody.
Bye.